जी होते हैं इस रात आप लिस्टिंग टू रेडियो दोस्ती ऑन 88.9 एफएम और जैसा कि आप जानते हैं कि आज हमारे मेहमान वी हैव अ गेस्ट टुडे हियर ऑलरेडी अराइव्ड होप यू ओपन योर माइक एज वेल डेविड yes please ladies and gentlemen I would like we promised that today the विशु जो हमारे आज होंगे मेहमान so first of all we'd like to add him in a stream. Hi David, how are you?
Oh, good, Zed. Lovely to see you.
Yes, David. So, first of all, welcome to the community radio and 88.9 FM Radio Dosti. We've been serving community for the last 20 years, and I was just going through your portfolio, and it seems like you have very appeal. You are a spokesperson for Aboriginal justice. You are child protection, education, energy, forest, justice, control, local government, works rights, and compensation. So you are spokesperson for the green, all those things, and I was just
Yeah, it
thinking to
keeps me
myself,
busy, Zed. It keeps me busy.
I was
There's
just
always
thinking
plenty
to
to do.
myself, these in this government, this is the all uphill battles you've been fighting, and you are a member of a parliament in New South Wales, and we, as we can see, we're going through a pandemic at the moment, and I see. From the Greens, they always been a warriors, and especially Marine Farouki today, she was talking about the new legislation. It's there to be passed, and it is very discriminatory as well. First of all, I would like to welcome you to Pakistani Community Program, Urdu language program, and we usually have a lot of people coming here and we interviewing them. So, I mean, I can see your pitches for that. You're a family man, you're everything. But thing is that these are very special times, and I've been here for 30 years. When I came here, looking from the eastern point of view, the West and especially Australia was known as a very open country, where they were very welcoming to refugees. They were people, and their education system was known as one of the best education systems. So that's why people like me wanted to come here and study. And on the same time, but and the police and the law system was in such a way that unless you do anything wrong, nobody is about to catch you. But if you do something wrong, I mean, if you break the law, yes, they will come after you.
Yep.
But if you don't break the law and you're minding your own business, but in last 30 years, what I see is everything is gone in reversal. Actually, we are not welcoming refugees anymore, right? And the universities has become cash cows, as you can see in renewable energy, we are not getting anywhere. There's a lot of question in one question. You can go
Yep.
tackle one by one. And renewable energy, we're not ready for it. The world is going ahead with their electric cars, with everything, and we're still struggling uh, to come to the one point what we're going to do about it. So let's start with say about refugees and the laws about refugees and how we gone backwards rather than forward. I think, don't you think these are the pillars of the society that makes society open and strong?
Yeah, well, I think you can judge a society by how it treats the least fortunate, not only amongst our society but around the rest of the world. And if that's how you judge Australia, then our behaviour over the last 3 decades, particularly since 2001 and that appalling sort of Tampa. I don't know if you remember. I'm sure you do, that terrible federal election over those people, those refugees who were trapped on that ship, the Tampa, and how it became this hot button issue in Australian politics, and it's now actually bipartisan policy between the Labor Party and the coalition that our approach to refugees is one of group and individual cruelty designed as a deterrent, and that fails pretty much every ethical and philosophical standard that you can apply for laws. The idea that we'll pass laws that will deliberately and intentionally harm children, harm parents, deliberately harm them through no fault of their own, but harm them in order to send a deterrent message to other people. That fails pretty much every philosophical standard for a law, but it's now the bipartisan policy of both the Labor Party and the coalition. It's hard to imagine how we've got to that being the kind of entrenched position. What I mean, as a Greens MP, we've always spoken out against these laws. We've voted against them every time they've come to us in Parliament. But I think both those major parties think that there's a part of middle Australia in their eyes that are going to back them in on this stuff and are going to vote for them on this stuff. And what I would hope we can do with politics over the next 5 to 10 years is persuade enough politicians to make the principled case to Australians. And I think Australians will listen if political leaders make the case that actually organised intentional cruelty can't be a basis for any laws, and we have to get rid of these mandatory detentions. And you're seeing that with those Billawheeler family. The kids there being tortured, having to be brought to Australia. And when I say tortured, I mean deliberately harmed, deliberately put in isolation, taken away from their peers, taken away from school, taken away from their community, intentionally harmed. Australia can't stomach it when they see the faces and it becomes a story about individuals. We now need to make it clear that everyone who's subject to these laws has the same story, the same human story behind them. So,
I mean, yeah, that's the latest story. I mean, I exactly follow your lead that it's there. But the thing is that in past, what I noticed that there used to be two different ideologies. Either you're with Labour or you with Liberal. But one used to be on the left, one used to be on the right. But over the years, it has been seen that both have become to the middle. And I mean, only thing is separating. If somebody's spoken up and said something about their policies, it's Greens, and the Greens always been advocating the freedom of speech, freedom of like your motto is, I was reading about you, and you say everybody's entitled to a good life, and
yeah.
it doesn't look like it's a good life at the moment for the refugees and whoever in very poor circumstances they come here.
Well, one of the things I studied at university, I did economics in one of my courses at university, and the Labor Party and the coalition remind me of the economic theory about ice cream sellers on a beach. So if you have a big long beach, and you've got a bunch of people on the beach, and they all want to have access to ice cream, the best way of having them positioned would be each of them about a third of the way down the beach, so people could sort of travel to the nearest ice cream seller. But then, as it turns out, the two ice cream sellers, if they want to maximize the number of people they sell ice creams to, end up moving closer and closer and closer and closer together until they're right next to each other, right in the middle of the beach. So one person has one half of the market on one side, and the other person has the other half of the market on the other side. And that's not a good outcome for people on the beach, but it maximizes the returns for the two ice cream sellers. And that's exactly what's happened with the ALP and the coalition in politics. They've each come as close to each other as they can in order to each steal 50% of the electorate. And so there's almost nothing between them. And I don't think that's how politics should be. I think it should be a contest of ideas. I think it should be a contest of principles, and not just, two people trying to sort of pretend that they have a different policy in order to maximize their vote share.
Coming to the next subject, I want to come. I mean, we're talking about the refugees, and I heard you sometimes speaking up as well. And that speaking up is about, you were speaking about Palestine, especially what's happening in Palestine at the moment. And, as coming from a Pakistani community, and the majority of the community is very distressed about it. And when they see these photos of the streets, and there's been the houses, and it's not the first time happening. It's happening all the time. I know that the wall has been built, and it's kind of sad. And the problem is the Australian policy, exactly, they tag with American policies as well. They tag along whatever the America says, we follow, yeah, and that's yes, and that's all about. But the human rights and human violation is been horrendous. I mean, it's like you can't compare to anything, and it's like apartheid kind of government. What do you think?
Well, I think there are a bunch of people in Labor, and there's to the extent that people think about human rights in the coalition, people in the coalition, they kind of think that there are human rights for everybody but Palestinians, is their kind of approach to the world. They'll talk about human rights, but human rights for everybody except for Palestinians, who they exclude from that. And indeed won't call out the Israeli state for the violence and the repeated breaches of UN resolutions, human rights laws, constant breaches by the Israeli state, refuse to call them out. So I'm one of the co-conveners, one of the co-chairs of the Parliamentary Friends of Palestine in the New South Wales Parliament. It's been an ongoing concern of mine, a deep concern of mine in politics, the plight of the Palestinian people and the need for a Palestinian state. I've travelled to Palestine myself. I've been into the West Bank, seen the way in which that appalling apartheid wall has carved Palestinian land from farmers and from families who have held it for generation after generation. I've been stopped at those Israeli security checkpoints. I've been and seen Palestinians humiliated at Israeli military checkpoints. I couldn't get into Gaza because it's part of this, ongoing global blockade. And I think when you go there and you see the generosity and the spirit of the Palestinian people, you see just how beautiful the countryside is, and you just see how it's been occupied by a foreign military power who is exercising arbitrary control over the Palestinian people, including in military courts, where they bring kids into military courts and prosecute them in military courts for the, crimes of maybe throwing a rock or being suspected of throwing a rock at an Israeli soldier, and they can be kept in jail for 6 or 12 months without charge. I think when you visit there and you come back and you're not an advocate for Palestine and you don't call out Israeli war crimes, well, I don't think you'd have a heart. So it's a passion of mine. It's a passion of mine in the state parliament. And, I've been pre-selected to lead the Senate ticket for the Greens in New South Wales in the federal parliament. And I can tell you it'll be a passion of mine in the federal parliament too. I believe in, I reject the concept that we talk about human rights for everybody but Palestinians. It's got to be core human rights business for us in Australia too.
It's well, first of all, congratulations to pre-selected as a ticket for Greens senator as well. And I think I
Careful
follow.
what you ask for, Zahid. I think a lot of work there.
Narin Faruqi is at the moment seems like a lone warrior down out there, and she's always getting up and just. Mind-blowing position. She's very powerful. She speaks very powerfully,
Yeah.
and she speaks for a lot of unfortunate people as well. On the same time, the student issues, Kashmir issue, she hasn't spoken very well on that as well. And I've seen her a lone warrior, and I hope you get there and she gets a support from you, and both of you can not change the world, but change even some minds and the way people at the moment thinking is absolutely right. Next, coming to education, and as I mentioned before, that the Western education, the Australian universities, the Australian schools being again talking from the Eastern point of view, the people want to come here, but it's more like it becoming a cash cow, and more like it is becoming kind of. And people want to come not to get an education, how to get a residence here, how to get this here, get there. But education is the main goal we should be giving to our kids, and it's not free anymore. That should be the basic rights of every Australian and every human, basically, because we are Australian. I will just say Australian, but overall should be a basic rights to have an educate your child for every human. And you have children, and I have a children, and now we can see that how much they have to pay by the time they get out of university. They already in debts.
Well, what really frustrates me in this debate, there are two aspects to the education debate that I think are deeply, deeply unfair and problematic in Australia. One is school funding. I'm the state education spokesperson for the Greens here, and I see the way in which federal funding in particular has increasingly skewed towards super wealthy private schools that are actually literally putting the money from the federal government into big investment funds. They don't even spend it on classrooms and teachers. They just put it in the bank to add to their growing investment funds. And meanwhile, public schools are being starved of the funds they need to create the world-class education that every kid in Australia deserves. And I think we've got to tackle that. We've got to absolutely turn those rivers of cash that are going into these elite private schools and put them into the public school system so that we have world-class public school system. And then when you get to universities, I mean, I was the first generation to start paying the HECS bill. But my HECS bill, when I finished my 5 years at university, and I got 2 degrees out of it, was about $36,000. Kids now who are studying just an arts degree can face a bill of $60, $70, $80, $100,000 to an arts degree. If you want to end with a medical degree, then it's a couple of $100,000 you start in debt before you earn your first dollar in your career. And those laws have all been put in by a bunch of politicians, you know, in the coalition and Labor, who all got a free university education. I mean, they all got a free university education. Now they're through. They want to lift the moat up and put these huge fees in place. Now, in a country as wealthy as Australia, and particularly a country that prizes education, wants people to go to university, wants people to study, wants people to add to that, you know, the creativity, the economic power that comes from a great education, we need to go back to free university education. We can afford it. We could afford it in 1975. We could afford it in 1985. We're richer than we ever were. We can definitely afford free university education now. I actually think we just need to be a bit honest about where the money's going to come from and start making some of the big corporations and the mining corporations actually contribute their fair share. We can and we should get back to free university education now and focus on genuine education. And I think you're right, Zahid, that the fact that universities are so dependent upon student income means that they're far more focused on getting the fees in and attracting students than actually the product that they deliver, the world-class product they should be delivering to the students.
At the moment, which is the most global phenomena is, and that phenomena is that the global warming. And global warming and the alternative to our energy, fossil fuel, going towards emission increase, getting more. So it seems like we are in basically in refusal, in denial. Yeah. That if it's any exists, and I call it we almost adopting American. They are in denial. We are in denial in America, in here as well. And if there's no I mean, there should be, to me, it should be an emergency at the moment towards a global warming, and we should be doing things quickly for coming generations. And as you can see, that one virus, what can it do? What can happen later on? I mean, we must have to follow head on. I mean, we first have to go to head on, and I mean, very passionate about we have a wonderful example. I mean, I come from Pakistan, as you know. Imran Khan's running there. He started. Pakistan was running out of trees because there was so much. They're cutting the trees off. But he started a $1 trillion tree tsunami there, and it's going very successfully. And I think we need to do something like that for the alternative energy, and the source need to be different than what we have today. And technology is available, but Australian government again. It's very slow to take on these things. I mean, I am blubbering my words sometimes because I'm very passionate about it. I feel about that one. And as you can see, I mean, disaster 2020 we had, and it's getting worse and worse. So I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of becoming a hopeless. Like I have no hope that anything going to happen on that end.
Well, Zaid, I agree with you right up to the end of no hope. I 100% agree with you right up to there. We've got to have hope, and we've got to have a belief that we can actually turn this thing around. And I'll give you just a couple of reasons to have some hope. Well, first of all, one reason not to have hope is, as we're speaking, this guy called Barnaby Joyce has just been re-elected to lead the National Party and is now the Deputy Prime Minister. And he is one of the most unreconstructed climate denialist people you could possibly imagine. I mean, the thought that he's now the Deputy Prime Minister. That does actually fill me with a sense of despondency and fear for our future. But putting him to one side, I'll give you a couple of reasons for hope. I don't know if you've seen over the last couple of weeks, you can go off the coast of Sydney and you can see this huge whale migration that's coming up and down. It's absolutely gorgeous. The other day, there were about 50 humpbacks and a couple of minkies all breaching at the same time. It was astounding what you could see off the coast of Sydney and whale watching. If you think back 30 or 40 years ago, the thought that we would have seen so many whales going down off the coast of Australia, which traditionally had a whole bunch of whaling stations in. Whales are on the edge of extinction. They were being globally hunted. There didn't seem a solution to it. It was going to require international cooperation. That was never going to happen, but we did it. We made the case. We built the it was local activism initially, then it was global cooperation, then we passed the laws, and now we've actually turned the whale population back from the edge of extinction through global cooperation. We did the same on CFCs. If you remember the aerosols that were being sprayed around and they were pumping a hole in the ozone layer, big hole in the ozone layer, and that was actually affecting Australia really badly. We actually managed to do the global cooperation on that, turn the ship around and actually fix it. If we turn our mind to it, and if we treat it like the emergency it is, we treat it like the crisis it is, we can actually fix this global warming disaster. But the task gets harder and harder and harder every year we delay the work, and every year we delay the reforms necessary. There's more carbon being pumped into the atmosphere, and we have to lower our future budget. So it is absolutely urgent. And look, as frustrated as I am about the federal government and their climate denials, I mean, they just agreed to put like $600 million to build a new gas-fired power station in the Hunter Valley here in New South Wales. Crazy idea. The market wouldn't build it. Nobody else would build it. So they decided to drop $600 million of our money on it. I mean, it's disgraceful on every front. But last year in New South Wales, I was able to work through with even a coalition state government in New South Wales that the Environment Minister brought through a roadmap for renewable energy to build a whole bunch of renewable energy, 5 big renewable energy zones in New South Wales, huge things, with billions of dollars of investment to come to produce renewable energy. We managed to shepherd to bring that law through the parliament. It was a bit of a hard, rocky ride at different times. We had One Nation going crazy and trying to stop it. The Pauline Hanson's One Nation Party, that might surprise you, going crazy and trying to stop it. But we managed to stare them down and we got the legislation through, and we actually now have a roadmap in New South Wales to deliver around about $35 billion worth of renewable energy projects in New South Wales. I'm a little bit excited about what that will do. But, you know, it's a decade too late, 2 decades too late. It's only in New South Wales. It's not in the whole country. And even that, you know, won't get us where we need to get to on climate change. But look, yeah, the federal parliament and both, you know, Labor and the coalition fighting over who loves coal more. I mean, that is a dead end politics. I think the Australian community is miles ahead of that, actually miles ahead of that. We legislated for it in New South Wales, and I have every hope when I get into the Senate, we can legislate it through federally too, and finally put some bloody common sense into this debate and start protecting our planet for our kids.
That's fantastic, David. It's been lovely to talk to you, and you did put some of my mind at ease. I can say that. I mean, honestly, because I'm a graduate in political science and I'm a student of politics as well, and I totally understand how the systems work. But over the years, what I see was happening in Australia, and bear in mind that I lived more here for 30 years. I was 21 years in Pakistan, 30 years here. So it's my home, and I do get worried about it. I do get worried about my children and everybody else's children.
Me too, Zahid. Yeah.
It's what's going to happen. It's our country. It's our future. You know, this is our home now. So I even go to Pakistan. I get sick about homesick after 3 weeks. I wanted to come back. Like this is I start cooking pasta at home. They go, what are you?
You need a tomato pasta.
I start looking for a shop. I have to sometimes make it with my own hands of pasta. Then I cook it. I'm very proud of one thing actually. In my village, I introduced Australian culture by designing a barbecue.
Oh,
because they
really?
didn't have this kind of a barbecue. So one barbecue started traveling the whole village, and then everybody's having a barbecue now. But I've been a very proud Australian there. But thank you so much for having on, and I would like to wish you all the best from us and from our community and from all the friends we have here and whoever's listening. And this program will be shared around all over. I mean, already shared to different groups, which is subcontinent Indian and Pakistani groups. We keep the friendship among them. So hopefully the community will get behind you behind your idea, and hopefully we have another warrior in Senate as well, and we continue the good work.
Thanks, Zahid. And I'd love to come back on again. It's been a real pleasure tonight. I've really enjoyed it.